All right, yeah, guys, doing today, we're about to hop into the final review of Proverbs chapter 22. First things first, though, I just want to make sure y'all like that video up, hit a little exit full screen, scroll a bit, like it, and then full screen it back up. You feel me? So in verse 20, it says, "Have I not written to you excellent things in counsels and knowledge?" Right? And he's just expressing the fact he's written them out. It's easy to follow something when it's written out, right? They tell you in class, right? If your teacher ever used the statistic, it's like you're more likely to remember stuff if you write it down. Now, I'm not saying he tried to remember it by writing it down, but we have it here for us written down so it could be passed down, right? Had this not been written, could have been passed through oral tradition, but we see how oral tradition can mess some things up, right? The certain stories and myths and all that were passed down oral tradition, and through the times they've been muddied, right? Namely, you could say the bits and pieces of the Quran, right? There's some things that contradict with some other things because it started as oral tradition until eventually it was written down. But even when it got written down, it was in 20 different books of different versions of it, whatever, until it was coagulated into one. So that's different. But God has luckily blessed us with the wisdom that He had to write this stuff down, and then enough so that it could be preserved from generation to generation up until now. It has been over 2,000 years. More than that, obviously, but over 2,000 years these writings have been here, right? Just in written form. And now we have them visually, right? They're not going nowhere because the Lord has preserved them, right? And these are excellent things. These are things that we're glad have been written down because without them, we don't have this pool of wisdom, right? There isn't a book like this anywhere else in the Bible, let alone out in the world that's got this much wisdom, you know? So that I may make thee know the certainty of the words of truth, that thou mightest answer the words of truth to them that send into thee. What? Right? It says that I may make known to thee the certainty of the words of truth, right? So that we may know them, right? Because how much, right, this faith that we're called to have is supposed to be rock solid, right? So when we're shaky in our faith, that leads other people to say, well, his faith isn't that strong, why should I believe, type thing, right? We have to be rock solid in our faith. That's why it's called faith, because it's unwavering, right? It talks about that a lot in the New Testament. But more importantly, it says so that you might answer the words of truth to them that send unto thee, right? So when people ask you stuff, we're supposed to be able to respond. We're supposed to have the answer with us because that shows our faith, right? How can you have faith in something that you don't know or don't understand, right? It's like when there's a question on the test, if you have faith in your answer, you're not stressing that question when it's asked. But if you don't, you're shaking, you're wavering because you don't have certainty that the answer you have is correct. But when somebody asks you, right, when a teacher calls on you, are you going to be nervous because you don't know the answer? Or are you going to be firm because you know the answer? And you might just be nervous because you're afraid of public speaking, but that's a whole different thing on its own, right? So it's not only so that we know the certainty of the words of truth, right? That's one thing to know them, but two, to be able to answer them when the time arises, when somebody questions your faith, when somebody has some agenda against you, right? How are you going to respond? And more so, your actions are going to dictate how much you actually believe what you believe. Are you going to come at them with anger and malice if they come at you with anger and malice? Hopefully not, right? We can't be perfect at all hours of the day, but at the same time, it's up to us to allow God to have the power in us to let peace flow out from that and to not crash out, for lack of better terminology right now, right? To let peace flow out of us, not only through our actions, but through our words, so that we may come together in a calm, collected manner to express why we have faith in the way that we do and to answer any questions that they may have regarding our faith or regarding the truth in general, right? Because it's not always just about our faith, it's what we know to believe is true, or what we believe to know is true, aka what we know is true, because what else is there? Nobody else fully understands science because they weren't built on the foundations of what it believed in. But the Bible has its belief from first to end, from start to finish, beginning of the world to what's going to happen at the end of it. We don't need anything else. We got the script right here, bro. We got the script right here, and how to make it to the end. So why would I not believe it? Right, right. Rob not the poor because he is poor. Neither oppress the afflicted in the gate. Right, and the gate can mean inside or outside. Back in that time, they used to send the lepers and the unclean people, if they like touched dead bodies or whatever, they used to send them outside the gate. Right, so it said, "Don't rob the poor. They're poor." It's like, don't make the sick sicker. Don't beat the already injured guy. Don't rob the poor. Right, it's as simple as that. I believe. Don't oppress the afflicted in the gate. We could check that out. Right. The poor among us deserve more protection and compassion because even if one is poor because of their moral failings or foolish behavior, they should still not be taken advantage of and robbed, right? And then verse 23, for the Lord will plead their cause, and the spoil of the soul of them that spoiled them, right? So you do that to the poor, you got God coming at you, right? We're told not to take vengeance into our own hearts and let the Lord handle it. That's exactly what we're saying here. You rob the poor? All right, sure. Just wait when God comes knocking. He gonna spoil what you got, right? Spoil the soul of those that spoil them, right? Your soul. He's gonna take your soul. What does that mean? He's gonna take it and put it away from him, right? Away from him. And we don't want that, right? So don't rob the poor. Don't oppress those afflicted in the gate. And that could be anybody. Anybody could be in the gate. We've all been at the gate at one point in time in our life, right? We've all been afflicted at some point. Not everybody's been poor at some point, but right, we may have been poor in spirit at one point, poor in faith, poor in action, something like that. So when somebody's like that, don't kick them while they're down, essentially is what it's saying. Because the Lord will plead their cause should they have faith. Even if they don't have faith, right? You're going to reap what you sow. So that there's that, right? But he's going to spoil the soul of them that spoiled him. And that's another representation of how our faith manifests through our actions, right? Because somebody of faith would not do that, right? God would have the power to let them control themselves and not do that, you know? Verse 24, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. 25, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. And this is saying it as plainly as possible. You need to stay away from anybody who is angry and furious. Not only that, but anybody who's just sinful in general, right? Because you can learn their ways, and it's easier than it sounds to learn a way, right? Because to us, we just see it as, oh, we don't want to be all angry and we don't want to be furious, right? But it's all these other things. There's jealousy, there's pride, all this type of stuff. You hang around those kind of people. Why? Because when you see them acting like that subconsciously, you think, well, I want to be liked like that, right? Psychologists and sociologists will tell you that humans are a social species. The Bible will tell you we're a social species. We've been made to be made with other things. We're supposed to be around other things. We're supposed to have love for other things. We're supposed to care for other things, have dominion over other things. We need to be around things. And with that, being shunned is like directly against one of our natures, right? To be around other things. Even God is 3 in 1, right? He's not alone. So with that, right, there's influence that comes off of those other things, right? So we may feel the fear of not being liked, right? Now, I can personally attest to this. There is so many times this year, right? You got friends and you want to hang out with those friends, right? I'm a very big people person. I love hanging out with people. I love being with people. So I grew up with brothers, right? I grew up with people around me. It was great. I love being around people still. And when I was at school, right, a lot of my friends, just victims of circumstance, right, were on the same job. Those became my friends because those were the people around me and they were cool people, right? So they're my friends. They're still my friends now, right? But there's plenty of times when I'm with them when I'm like, if I was by myself, I would not be doing this. If I was with my God-fearing brothers and sisters, I would not be doing this because I don't see the point, one, but two, it's just like, I know this is counterproductive to my faith. Did I still do it? Yes, because not out of fear for not wanting to be liked. Like, I was, to be honest, it was probably a very small portion of it, but more so just like I valued hanging out with them and having friends and being around people more than I did my relationship with God in those moments. And that's just being honest, right? Because I could have easily walked away and said, you know what, guys, I'm not gonna do this. Like, I value my faith in God over all this, right? There's times where, I say, hey, not doing this because of my faith, but then there's a lot of times where I'm like, I just be thinking to myself, if I was with my brothers and sisters in Christ, I would not be doing this. Did that change me from doing it with them? No. But at the same time, like, it wasn't anything inherently sinful. Like, you look at it and be like, oh my gosh. But at the same time, I was able to recognize in the moment, like, if I was with other people that feared God the way that I claim to, then I would not be doing this. And because of that, right, that just proves how far this verse goes in terms of people have an impact on us, whether you see it or not in the moment or not. It's there. And because it's there, it still makes it true. No matter if you want to see it or not, it's still true. Also, one last point, because when I was a psych major, we actually talked about this a fair bit. Friends have more influence on you than your parents do, and that's in relation to whatever verse was talking about, not hanging out with angry people. 24. friends have more influence on you than your parents do ultimately. This is why kids of like second generation households or first generation households, they don't have accents. Why? Because they're around more people who don't have accents, and if they're around them for longer, therefore they may be a little hint of an accent from the time spent with their parents, but in general they don't. And more so why kids are more able to rebel against their parents, because different parents have different things. So when you see some of your friends doing things that your parents wouldn't approve of, but their parents do approve of it, or they're hiding it from their parents because they don't approve, and then you're both hiding stuff from your parents, it's because you have these negative influences in your life. So friends have a bigger influence on us than we see, and there's some more psychological basis to that kind of stuff. But that's just the arguments I remember from my time as a psych major, as I'm not a psych major anymore. But I always found that very interesting. Anyway. All right, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.